go.
All right, dude. There it is.
We're
on.
We are on.
Boom! There we are.
Oh.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, hey, today we're talking tank placement. I got Terrance here. For those of you who don't know Terrance, I talk to Terrance all the time. My wife actually really likes him, but hates it because I can talk to him for 2 hours straight. And there's a reason for it. Terrance will give it to you real all the time. Doesn't care about my feelings ever. Well, maybe a little.
I do.
Like really minority.
Don't make it not that bad.
That's
No,
sweet.
but like if I want to go ask somebody, man, who I know who knows what they're talking about, or at least has a legit opinion, Terrance is one of the few people that's like on speed dial, eats up most of my minutes, and like I know that I'm gonna get a legit answer. I don't always agree with it, but I know that it's gonna be an informed, thoughtful opinion, and it's gonna help me progress the conversation. So a lot of the stuff that you guys see, in some ways probably shaped by some of the input that Terrance has shaped. So here today, you're gonna see a little bit insight into that like raw, uncut mind with us. I'm super excited about it. And for one thing, for sure, that we know for sure that you guys are gonna come away with, is you're going to know where to put a tank in your house better than you did at the start of this video.
Boom.
I can guarantee
There
that
you go.
for sure, especially those of you that want to put a big tank in, but even really down all the way down to a 90-gallon tank.
Yeah.
You're going to learn something about where this goes. Some of you have done it wrong. You're going to say, oh, I wish I had listened, or I knew that back when, because I wish I'm that person right now. I look back at all of them and like, oh man, if I'd only listened or if I'd only knew. So
I've only had one tank below 90 gallons.
Only one.
Only one.
Well, that was my first one, but I went down to 70 after
You
that.
probably weren't even born when I had that tank.
That's probably true. I like to think about it that way anyway, old man. So I want to let's learn a little bit about Terrance here right off the bat, man. Most people know that you work for Neptune, so what do you guys do there?
We make systems that pretty much solve the problem with stability in your aquariums. I mean, that's really what we are right now. We started out as just making controllers and building aquarium controllers. The founder of our company, Kurt, started making them in pretty much his garage clear back in 1996, and now we have a full line of products, and our most recent product, the Trident, that helps get you to the point where you can have a stable aquarium, which is key to success in a reef aquarium, is that stability.
All right, that's the end of the Neptune sales pitch that I'm going to give him. What do you actually do yourself, though?
So you mean at the company or outside the company?
Like day to day, man. What is Terrance doing over at Neptune, man?
Reading lots of comments. So I do read lots of comments. I do interact with lots of people out there, lots of you guys out there, day in and day out, trying to keep my my ear to the street of what's going on. Helping come up with new products, helping promote the products, do the live streams that we do. Of course, we do a live stream.
Let's Talk Reef.
Let's Talk Reef every other week. Little plug there for that, and also steer the sales team. We have a couple of guys who do all the brick and mortar sales that are out in the field. We have Tom out in the East Coast, and we have Vincent on the West Coast. So I manage those guys, and overall, just try to help sell and market Neptune Systems products.
All right, so here's the thing. I'm just going to say, I feel like I'm pretty in tune with the industry. Like I'm in the different areas, learning about stuff, talking to people all the time. But I will tell you that he's double X. And so I learned stuff like little nooks and crannies, man, where you're always in these conversations. And there's one thing that in this industry you're going to find. There are people that have aquariums, and there's people that don't.
This is true.
And the people that don't, just don't get it. And the people that do experience the problems that everybody else has and wants to solve them. And
wants to help other people because they're passionate about having a great aquarium and they want to see other people be successful and do the same thing. And you can't do that unless you're doing it yourself.
Yeah.
It's that simple for me.
I mean, if you think about it, it's like it doesn't matter what hobby or whatever you're into, man. It could be like bodybuilding. It could be RC cars or fishing, man.
I did RC
bodybuilding all the time. But who wants to listen to somebody who doesn't actually fish or lift weights or anything tell you how to do that?
Right.
Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
And the chances that they're going to build you a product or gear or anything, develop the right diet or lure or whatever, if they don't actually do it, zero. Right? I mean, they might be in the hemisphere, but it will never be the best available
And sometimes
thing.
you get people who start out with, in the hobby, whatever one of those hobbies it is, and they start working for one of those companies, and in 2 years or 3 years, they're out of it, but they still need a job. So they're still hanging out, giving advice and giving information. It's usually old, it's usually stale, and it's usually not the things that you want to listen to. You want to talk to people like you guys or us who are actually doing it at the moment.
Well, this is where like Terrence's expertise comes in handy in today's topic, because he's got a 425-gallon tank in your home, so
Yes.
tank placement is right up your alley when you were building this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is the dream tank, and we moved into our house when I took the job with Neptune Systems. I was a year in Salt Lake, and then decided I had to move to California. And when we decided to pick out a house, we started looking around, and we finally decided on one. We walked in, and my wife said, "That spot right there, when I walk in, that's where the aquarium goes." And I'm like, I married
That was
the
it.
right person.
There it
Oh
is,
my
man.
I mean,
God.
sometimes it's not that easy,
Yeah.
where it's just like, hey, right there. Because
And-
you
and-
went like through 4 or 5 different ideas of where yours was going, but
In my old house, yeah. Well, it was. Yeah, I did. You're right. But like in this new one, man, it was the same thing. Like, if somebody is looking for where the bathroom's going to be or the kitchen or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if you talk, and probably the guy that doesn't have a tank, man, in this industry, is walking through the house, he's thinking about where the bathroom's going. Like the people that are thinking about the tank goes,
Yep.
man, like that's the
Well,
DNA.
But it was my
you know?
wife. That was what's so awesome.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
And I think you guys have a picture of where we taped it out. It's right in the entryway. But when I went in, I had a 210-gallon tank.
Yeah.
In Utah. And so when we came out, she's thinking that's the same tank size. I said, there's this gigantic wall. I said, hey, we can't have a tank that's 210 gallons. It'll look like a nano tank against that wall. We're going to have something at least for like 420, 450 gallons. And she's like, oh, that's okay. Is you sure that's big enough?
Boom.
Married the
Oh,
right
I
person.
got the
Yes.
right one. I got the right one.
Yes.
You were made for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that's awesome, man. So like, let's just start off. Like, I think we have a picture of your very first tank.
Yes.
So let's
Oh,
go
yes.
there. All right.
Yes.
I mean, your lab coat, man. Tell me the story real quick.
This is Miami Vice times. This is 1985. The tank itself was a 60-gallon tank that my buddy Brendan had acquired through somebody that owed him money, and he had no place to put it because his mom wouldn't have it. And my mom was ultra cool, so she said, "Yeah, bring it over to the house." We set it up, and we filled it with like a 6-bar grouper, a panther
Yeah,
grouper, an
yeah.
eel, all those things. Feed them goldfish, everything you did way back when, and brought stuff from the tide pools. It was just super fun.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. So do we have a picture by chance of your next tank, or did we just jump all the way to the
I
end?
don't know if he has the. I had a 110 tall after
okay.
that. That was when I got back into the hobby in 2008.
So how old were you there?
That was 17.
You were 17 years
Yes.
old. All right. I won't ask how old you are now.
Well,
But,
you can
I
do the
was
math.
a year old.
so
So you have a sump going on in there and everything?
No,
too?
that's a goldfish holding facility.
Oh my
Oh,
yes,
okay.
the food facility. Oh, funny.
I like the tiki feel of this thing.
Oh, I want that tank back, by the way. It's one of those things where you've had that car when you were younger, and you're like, I want to have that
no.
car
Is it a
back.
hexagon?
Yeah, it's a hexagon,
okay.
and had Home Depot lights in the top.
That's cool.
It was awesome. Under gravel filter. It was
That
great.
is that's totally awesome, man. So, all right. So here's the thing: is eventually this thing builds up, and we've all dealt with different weight issues and whatnot. But like, you're planning for your new house, man, and like, what are the immediate things? We're gonna get to some of the things that like everybody runs into in a second, but like, what are some of the immediate things that just have are issues for you?
So first of all, the position was already decided for me. I mean, it was decided instantly, so that was done. Then I had to see how I was going to make it happen in
Yeah.
the house.
Right.
And the house I live on is on a little bit of a hill, so we have crawl spaces, not basements in California, but my crawl space is literally as tall as the ceiling. It's 10 feet in places. And so that gave me a lot of opportunities, but first I had to make sure that it could hold that much weight, because
Right.
we're talking 425
Oh, yeah.
gallons plus a 1,000-gallon tank and a 200 or 1,000-pound tank, and then a 200-pound stand. With all the water, you get 5,000 pounds or so that are going to go on the floor. It's like parking a full-size truck in the entryway of your house.
Except for in a smaller, more compact form factor.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like just lead bricks piled up.
So I hoped right away that was on a load-bearing wall that behind it, and that the joists were going the right way, and they were. So that was really good. But they were long joists that extended to the front. And in doing all the math and talking to engineering people and everything, said, oh, it should be fine. But I was like,
Should be.
I don't know if should be is going to be good enough for me. So I said, I'm going to go ahead and support this. I'll do it myself. And I bought a big old beam, and
yeah,
put
we're
the beam
looking
up
at
at the top. And then I bought these two, you see them on the screen there, these
Uh-huh.
two red supports. You can get those
Seen
off of
those
Amazon,
before. Yeah,
believe it or
I've seen
not.
those.
Okay.
And they're not that expensive. And then
Adjustable. Okay.
and luckily, I've got the ground that we are on is like compacted clay, so
Okay.
you don't have to even do much compaction. Put them on there, and then you can adjust them up. You can crank them up, and then after it still settles a little bit in your house, and as it settled, it loosened up a little and just tightened it up a little,
Yeah.
and it was good.
Oh, that's cool.
So in my house, man, like 3 houses ago, right, I really wanted this peninsula as you go in. And I had convinced my significant other to remove the closet. And like, so there was going to be no closet coming into the house,
No
you
coat
know,
closet,
like no coat closet, which I'm really giving up something for this, right? And I was surprised, man. So she was okay with it. And I had it all planned out. It was going to be like a 10-foot peninsula. So you open up the door, and the first thing you see is this tank coming in. And it's kind of divided the whole kitchen and living area. It was just one big great room, you know? And I'd had it all planned out. And then one of the things is, like, you know, we tend to like go to the forums and stuff and ask people stuff. And like, they have no idea. Nobody knows, like, if your floor can support what way. Well, yeah, but like in reality, like I can give some advice, but I've never been to your house and know like how much your floor is. We're asking the wrong people in that case.
Yeah, for sure.
So I went to, like, I think it was like Angie's List at the time, and I just looked for a framer or whatever and called one up for $100. He came over to my house, and the first thing he did is laugh at me, right? And so
Floors are too old and shit.
no, you know what he did, man?
What?
He pulled out of his pocket and he dropped a marble on the ground, man, and it rolled straight to the island that's in the middle of the room.
Oh.
Right? And so I had Joyce to go across the entire room, and I had like a kitchen island in the middle, and it has big stone weights on it. And it was fine for that, but it had just a little bit of sag. But he's like, dude, if you put a big old tank coming out from the wall going into the room, it's done, man. Like you may not like crash through, but you're gonna have this giant sag in the room. And like, I don't want to sit underneath it.
That's what I didn't want to have. That's why I put that there just in case, just to be sure.
And then he showed me down below. He's like, yeah, okay, so we can solve this, right? And we're gonna have to tear out your entire ceiling and put in steel beams and stuff. And like, like. Maybe, but like that's like the project that just gets put off forever, right? And so like that one just kind of got crushed. But like, yeah, if I could just go underneath there and jack it up, like that's the kind of thing where I don't even really need a structural engineer necessarily or a framer.
You can overdo it.
Yeah, I can just go look underneath there and like, oh, we'll put some supports in
like
here,
6
man.
of these in here, I'm good forever.
Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't do any math on it or anything. It's just like, well, if I put this in, I know it's going to be way better than it is, and I've already been told it was good enough, so I'm much better off.
Peace of mind.
Yeah, same thing if you just get like some 4x4s or whatnot too. If you can just like go in your basement and like tap them in underneath there, you're probably pretty good.
Well,
you know,
also
if
you don't
floor
know
to ceiling.
You don't know how many people are also going. My entryway, you know, my son who's older, you know, has friends over. He'll have 10, 15 friends over.
Right
they come in. He never invites them into the rest of the house, right? They just kind of congregate right in the front of the house and congregate by the aquarium. I mean, you get 10, 15 kids right there. That's a lot of weight too.
So the moral of the story in this one is, you know, go to I think Angie's List is kind of dying. So like, what is the new one? Home Advisor or something like that?
I don't know. There's the one where the lady sings in it that I turn
any one of those things. Like, look them up. Look for a framer or a contractor or something. Pay them the $100. They'll come out of your house and they'll tell you in 3 seconds where the best places to put a tank are.
Oh yeah.
Like you just like don't go ask your buddy because your buddy doesn't know. Unless
Especially
he's
you're
a
doing
framer.
the big tanks, you're doing these bigger tanks, these 200-gallon up tanks. You really have to be conscientious of what the structure is that you have.
Yeah, in most cases, like the 93-gallon or the 90-gallon I had, the 125-gallon I had, I found a retaining wall. I went to the basement. I was like, yep, this is a load-bearing wall. If I slap my 6-foot 125 up against the side of it, I'm most likely good.
Right.
And then the cube tank that I have, same thing. If I find a load-bearing wall, or maybe I don't have to, but I find like some place, like maybe a ground level floor or what have you, but I can slap it there and I'm good. I don't have to worry about 400-some gallons worth of weight and equipment and everything else.
And getting those joists perpendicular to the tank
That's
is
a
super
big one.
important because that'll hold up a ton.
And then, if
Literally.
you can find if you can find a place where that meets the joist and meets my 100-gallon tank, I'm probably good. I don't got to worry about more.
And in the basement, you don't have as much to worry about, but you still have utilities that run through the concrete and whatnot, so you have to be cognizant of that as well.
So the joist they're talking about is what supports the floor, right? So for those of you who don't know, like you go down and look down there and you can see them kind of running across the house. You want the tank to span as many of those as possible, not go down long ways across them, right? If at all possible.
And if you're in a house with a basement, you might have a ceiling and it's hard to tell, and there's ways that you can go into closets or utility areas and whatnot and look to see which way those joists go if they're covered with drywall.
So usually what I do actually is if I can't find a room that hasn't been finished, is they'll pop out one of the lights. And so you can unscrew your little recessed lights and then kind of look around and you'll be able to see.
Because usually they'll have a spanner that's between the two joists to hold the light up, especially if it's can lighting.
Okay, and you can also see things, what structural walls. If you just Google it, you can actually spot pretty quickly what a structural wall looks like. If it's 2x6s instead of 2x4s, usually it's supporting more weight. If they're doubled up or that there's doubled up on the top, those are good signs that that's true. But if you can get right next to the wall, like often, the foundation of your house will be cinder block. And if the joists are coming right out of the cinder block, that's the strongest point of the whole thing. The middle is the weakest point. The closer you can get to that wall, the better. So weight is the big thing. So let's move on to the next thing, man. So you solved the weight thing. You already knew where it was going in the house. Like, so you just wanted this thing right in the entryway.
Right when you come in the house. So we have a really...
There he goes, talking
about the way.
All the way. So when you come into our house, it's an open floor plan, and you come in, and to the left is living room, dining room, and to the right is the rest of the house, and it's just really the focal point of the house when you come in.
Let's see the tank. Let's go all the way to the video, man. We'll come back to it probably later. Oh, hey, you know what?
This is a close-up.
Pull off the video. We're going to show this later. Show the tank itself with some stuff in it. All right, where is it? All right, so that's the beginning of it. Like, can we see it in the room a little bit better? There you go.
There we go.
So that's the entryway, your house. I walk in. The first thing I see is your family's passion.
Exactly.
Done.
And everybody in the neighborhood sees it too, because we have all these big windows on that rise up in the house, so you can be anywhere in the hillsides of the and see aquarium going on in our house.
So yeah, look at all these awesome shots. So I will tell you that I used to have frag systems in my basement. Everybody thought that I was growing medicine down there.
Absolutely.
The whole neighborhood thought I was growing something down there because the bottom just glue all the time.
Yeah.
It's funny, like people are always walking by, like, what's in that? Is that aquarium? And like you can see all the people's heads turning.
When I was delivering mail before I came to this job, there was 3 houses that I spotted instantaneously were reefing houses because of the blue glow coming out of their house. I was like, oh, I know what's happening in there.
Right. But it's super important to have a tank, I think, in an area that everybody's going to be. I got lucky because my wife just said this is where it needs to be, so there wasn't a whole lot of choices that I had to make. But because I wanted to increase even the chances that we're going to engage with it, I even built into the stand a little cocktail table into it
I do like that.
with a couple of bar stools, so I can go and have a bowl of cereal there in the morning and look at the tank, or we can sit and have a couple of glasses of wine in front of the tank, and there's a reason to be at the tank. And you're not standing, there. So thinking about how you integrate the aquarium into the rest of your family is important, so that you can have the aquarium long term.
So I did the nerdier thing, which is I put my computer next to it. And nerdier means because I'm sitting there writing scripts, right? So my office used to be in a spare bedroom upstairs, right? And now I moved it downstairs, or I will anyway, once the tank's there. And so I will have to use that space. And like, literally, where's a better place to write scripts than sitting there staring at your tank?
Yeah, I do that. I do that on that little table on mine all the time too. I sit there right there in front of it and with my computer and just hang out. Yeah.
I created a necessity to be next to it, not like maybe I'll use it more if I suddenly take up knitting over there or something. I don't know, like not something
because
natural.
basements are very dangerous for reef tanks, okay? Because they are, the out of sight, out of mind. You're down there. Like when I lived in Utah, I had the basement. I didn't put my tank in the basement. It was, again, right in the middle of all the activity. And that's because in the winter, we didn't go down in the basement very often because it was hard to heat. It was always colder. And so that would have been half the year or 4 months out of the year that we were never down there. And then even in the summer, it was like, okay, if we're going to watch a movie or we're going to do that, then we're down there. But that I think that's death for people to having an aquarium, is to put it down in a space that they're just not in all the time.
So that's the like double-edged sword here. That is where people put big tanks, and because it's just the easiest place to put it because it's cement on the ground, right? And often you have a finished room down below, so it's not super easy to put in supports like you have or whatnot. And so, I mean, you see them all the time in basements, especially big tanks, just because it is. Like, you don't want to spend $80,000 rebuilding your house just to get your aquarium in there. That's it's really expensive. So you just do with what you can, when you can, right? But I have to say I agree. I hate putting tanks in the basement. When we talked about this, it's like
Yeah.
we were talking in my office earlier about where you're going to put the tank and how do you capture that method of I want to put it in the rooms you're going to be in. And you said,
Out of sight, out of mind.
that was it. That's what you said.
Is that what I said?
It is.
Yeah. No, I mean, it holds true with a lot of things. I had the tanks in my basement. So I had my main 125 on the main floor. I had a tank in my little biocube in my bedroom. But then I had a series of tanks down below. Now, granted, some of them were my frag tanks, but I had set up display tanks that I wheeled and dealed and got off of Craigslist. And I was like, oh, here's a whole tank setup. Why not have a whole new one down there? And those were the most neglected tanks out of my whole collection because I never went down there. It was not even a livable.
And
it was
nobody else did
unfinished.
either, right?
Yeah, it was an
So you
unfinished
didn't
basement.
care
So why
because-
would I be down there?
Because also your friends are looking at the beautiful
Yeah.
display tank,
Oh,
and that's
yeah.
just kind of like the workroom.
Yeah, well, you go down there to do laundry, and then you're like, oh, yeah, shit, there's a tank here. So, yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it in the basement or anything like that. But
Just in case you missed it, last week Randy almost slipped the F-bomb. And
Oh,
then right
no,
here,
no.
I
I heard it
the
too.
first, everybody thought the first swear word was going to come out of my mouth. But officially, you know,
you've done it before
I heard it too.
on this series.
I was actually worried about that for myself. And
I know. All right, so congratulations. I don't know.
It's the military. And I have a sailor's
Bravo.
mouth, even though I
No,
wasn't
I
a
thought it
sailor.
was hilarious. Okay, so yeah, man. So out of sight, out of mind is absolutely true. Like I want it to be, and not only just that it's going to go, you know, to hell if I like don't take care of it
Yeah,
or whatnot,
yeah,
if it's
yeah.
not in my face. But I like this is the coolest thing in the whole house.
Right.
Why am I hiding
Hiding
it?
it,
You know,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
So many times I'd actually have a smaller tank where I can put it, you know, in the main living space than a big giant tank. I can't.
that's
All
true.
right.
That's a good point.
So I violated that all myself.
But what I did want out of sight and out of mind was all the equipment. So that
Oh,
was
yeah.
that was
Yeah,
the
definitely
big
that.
part for me.
Noise.
Is I didn't want on my 210 that I had taken down in Utah. It had the sump underneath, and I lived with that. And there were so many negatives for me doing that. You know, spilling water, and I had hardwood floors there too, and the noise, and all of these different things.
Yeah.
I'm like, if I do this, I need to put it under the house. And the challenge was the only place for me to put it was 80 feet away under my house. I've got kind of a ranch style house around. And it was 80 feet around the corner in the house that I had
Ooh.
put in and actually dig in and create a fish room.
Oh, so
for
we
this.
have some shots of what that fish room looks like outside, right? Building process, maybe.
Yeah, he's got some there. So that's walking in. So that walks in from my deck down below the house. There's actually a utility door that went in, and all it was a dirt hill under the house. This is the crawl space. And so I had to cut in a retaining wall, and oh my God, that was a nightmare to do. Nightmare. The dirt is so hard. Even with a jackhammer, you couldn't get through some of the clay. But we got it done, and then put in a floor. So I put in basically just some pavers with some locking sand in between them, and then put in after that, and that's the pipes going down there. That's an interesting thing, cutting into the wall with
Yeah.
the wife. That is that is a super interesting, because if you look behind there in that picture,
Yeah.
you can see that there's also something flat that's being cut into. Well, I couldn't go down through the base plate of the wall,
Right.
so I had to go through into the kitchen and take away part of my wife's sliding drawer in one of her cabinets.
So you can have your plumbing
always
pieces.
So I could have my
right?
plumbing, so I could have the plumbing go down through the floor. And as I'm cutting that out, that's when it went from, oh, honey, this is great, love the aquarium, to, are you sure you know what you're doing?
It's true, man. Like,
The Sawzall, right? I'm like,
I'm like, hey, man, I got to move this HVAC and stuff. She's like, hire somebody. Like, no, man, this is easy.
Yeah,
you know, but like, I'm like, hey, I think I got to jackhammer up the floor so I can
oh, there
put
was
some
another picture up
drains
there.
in.
Pull that picture, that last picture. So that's now the sump going in. I got lucky and found a guy who had Howard Taft's bathtub.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
And found that for like $100
wow.
locally. And put it up on cinder blocks and some plywood, some marine plywood,
Sweet.
and that's my sump. It just gives me all the room in the world. It's at the right level.
Perfect.
It's awesome. Yeah, and a sink. Put a little sink in. Did all that.
Oh, cool, man. So that was another thing, man, spouses, right? So you're talking about putting this stuff in your house. You got super lucky, man.
Just like Dave last week said the same thing too.
Oh, yeah, I think that's in general. Like, even my wife, man, she's like, halfway in. She always supports me, but she's also trying to be sane at the same time, right?
If you don't have that, buy more jewelry.
Yeah. Well, dude, we definitely, the best thing I ever learned is trade. Hey, this is the thing I really, really want. What do you want?
Yeah.
I'll figure out a way. And then that's just kind of a natural thing. If you're just only asking for yourself, get prepared to be disappointed.
Oh yeah.
But in this case, what I did is actually hey, you know what? Well, we can do whatever you want to do in the upper 2 stairs of the house, but down here, I really need this to be my space and do these things, and you won't like all of them, but I won't do anything you hate, I promise. I got her a cool chandelier she really liked, and all of a sudden, man, I feel this is kind of coming out for both of us. Yeah, and so, but the reality is you're taking up space in somebody else's house, so your spouse and you are working together, but you can't take over their house either, expect.
And you need to follow through on it too, because if you're building this whole thing up as it's going to be awesome, because that's what we do, right? Oh, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have the ocean in our living room. We're going to have all of this. That's where you got to follow through because or it's going to be gone.
I will tell you the number one reason the tanks go down is because they look like crap in your living room, right? They're full of algae, and your spouse says, "Get that ugly thing out of my house," right? Because you didn't take care of it, you didn't follow through.
And if it's smelling,
right?
you're already past that point.
Yeah, and in my mind, I'm telling her I'm gonna jackhammer the floor up, and I'm you'll never even know what happened, man, because I'll have the guys in and out of here in a single day. The carpet will be back down or whatever. And if it isn't that way, well, man, I let her down, right? So I should expect the appropriate amount of crap that comes with that, right? So deliver on your promises, and it probably won't matter. If the floor ends up being a crater that's left open for the next 2 weeks, you deserve whatever's coming. If you just jackhammer up yourself with your buddies and end up having a 6-pack of beer instead of finishing it.
I have a little bit of that on mine right now because I still don't have a stand around mine.
Yeah.
Because I started out and said, okay, what's most important is what's in the glass, honey. Don't worry. Look how beautiful it is. And that's pretty much lasted now for 3 years.
That's funny. I thought those must have been older pictures. So let's see it again.
No.
Yeah. So that actually is still open.
It's still open and everything, and it looks like crap underneath.
Okay, so let's look at what it looks like inside.
And
right? It looks like that outside, still not finished, plumbing and wires and stuff.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like now.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. With the lights off, you can't see the open
Yeah, that's what I try to tell her all the time.
Yeah, let's just watch this
Actually,
on video.
I told Dave to actually crop that for me, and he didn't. But
there you go.
Because I'm sure I'm going to hear it from Nancy on this one. But I got to get Chris out there to do a stand for me and whatnot. I've just been.
You're gonna have Benner do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that guy, man. So Benner will actually match the woodwork
he's already looked
in
at
your house.
my furniture in the dining room. I sent him pictures of that and get it to match.
Those sticks, colonies.
But this is originally it had started out with I wanted LPS on the right hand side and SPS on the left, and then I got those Heniocus butterflies that were supposedly reef safe, and they kind of changed my mind because they ate all the scalemia, they ate the acans, they ate all sorts of stuff, and now it's pretty much going to be SPS on the right.
Yeah.
So there's a marginalis butterfly.
Look at this.
That kind of
Big
has
red
the
dragon
way of
colony at the
creating
bottom.
inevitability, and some people would take the fish out. Well, eventually, man,
I didn't.
Yeah, well, you get attached to them. They're like
I
your
do,
pets,
I
man.
do.
So, what am I gonna do?
I moved the corals down to the frag tank and the sump down in under the house, and then they subsequently didn't do well. And now this is actually probably about 3 months old, so a lot of those colonies you see there are doing even better. And the new sticks on the right there are growing up like crazy. So it's a pride and joy for sure.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So there is no question you have found a successful approach. And
that's 3 years too, from pretty much. I mean, from putting livestock into that.
Yep, that's 3 years. That's a
right
successful approach to 3 years for sure.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, he has I think it's the most watched or viewed build thread on Reef to Reef.
96 pages when I pulled it today. Yeah.
And I must say it
description
needs
below.
to be updated because it's probably now hasn't been updated in at least a year.
A year?
Yeah,
man.
and it still gets tons of traffic, and I've got a whole folder full of pictures because I still document things as I go along, things that I'm doing, because I know I'm going to put it in there for people. So hopefully maybe this will be the impetus for me to go out and to update it again.
Update your build thread.
Yeah, I need to.
So those build threads are really cool on Reef to Reef because you can see, the proof's in the pudding. So you can, listen to all kinds of people's opinions or whatnot on different things. Go ask a question, get 40 different opinions, and know which one to listen to. Or you can go out there and find people that have produced the dream that you're looking for and emulate that.
Right.
Right. And so I will tell you, hey, that's daunting. I don't want to read 96 pages of your thread. But actually, you know what? Asking all my own individual questions, I read 96 pages of random stuff anyway. Getting there.
The thing that keeps me wanting to do it, and I feel bad for not updating it recently, is because I got tons of good feedback from people who said, oh man, I opened this thing up, on a Sunday afternoon. It was a 3-beer thread, and it was good. It was worth every bit of it because, not everything I could use, but there were these 3 little tidbits that were super important that I can take away from that, and that's fulfilling from doing it, right? When you produce content, and you know that somebody got something worthwhile out of it, it makes you want to do more.
I will tell you, I had that experience with the clownfish harem. There was 30 fish, 30 days, or 3 years. I forget exactly the name of the thread was, but I opened it up. I was looking for information how to do this properly, and I was trying to collect all of it. But this was one of the sources that was the best. And the guy has 60 pages to how to create this harem in 4 years or 5 years of what happened at different points and whatever. And man, I took the time to read that whole thing end to end, and you know what? It is the reason that I was successful for 5 years of my own afterward with that is because I just copied what this guy did, to some point, and I added some of our own things in. I tried to make it only about the harem and didn't make it a reef tank as well. And I learned a little bit of his mistakes in there where he paid a little less attention to it and where they were not getting fed and they started getting aggression and
on
stuff.
each other, started pairing off.
Learn from his mistakes and you do these things and you won't have these problems. And we didn't have any of them, right? And so in the few times where we had a little, hiccups, I knew exactly what it was and we could fix it right away, right? And so just because I watched that thread, man, learn from the people that came before you. His name was Mbart or I can't remember.
I don't remember either.
I gotta remember. I'm sorry. It's 30 clownfish, 30 years or something.
I have to say, I am more of a fan of picking somebody you want to emulate than picking and choosing from lots of different things. This is one of the things I'm most against is, well, this guy used this and that seemed to work well, and this worked well over here, and I read this thread over here, and then trying to bring all those together and expect success. I think you need to stick 80 or 90% with the guy that you're reading, and then you'll be able to get the results at the end that's like that. You can't start to pull out key components and replace them with something else and expect success.
I can agree when it comes to the approach to reef keeping and the whole tank aspect, but say for example we were talking about building a fish room and things like that. I'm gonna go seek out all of those people that have extra fish rooms. I'm gonna pull oh, that guy's got a floor drain, and this is how he did it.
For sure,
That's
something
this,
different. I'm talking about the stuff that goes into the the keeping of the animals side of it, and what the husbandry is, and the techniques that you use.
That's a really interesting balance, though, Randy, because I normally give the same pitch you do: is find a person to emulate and follow that recipe for success. But you're right. There are times I'm building a fish room, and I can't build the same one you did. It just doesn't apply. Any of the things you did just don't apply to me. So I got to go looking for different things. My wife and I go through this kind of thing all the time. Actually, we're totally polar opposites on this thing. And I like to follow recipes. So my favorite cookbook in the world is called Food Labs. And it'll give you 20 pages about the science of why this works, and then you apply that science to making the food. I follow the recipe exactly, and I will produce the desired result at the end. Right? Now my wife likes to look at the recipe and say, makes it up. Okay, so I will tell you, hopefully she's not watching, but 90% of the time, I think I will outperform her. But one time, man, her magic mix will double the results of what I do. She's collected all of this information and created the one gem, right, with a little bit of intuition into the thing, right? And it's so much better than anything I could have made, right? But I feel like I got 80% success rate and she's got 10.
Right, but I'll bet you on that 10% when she does hit, she's way more fulfilled because she did it herself. She figured out a few things herself, and she hit a home run on her own. And it's like, I am awesome. I just didn't follow some other guy's recipe. So I get that, but I wouldn't want to do that with my aquarium.
So yeah, well, so that's the thing is what I would say is if you're new to this or even intermediate, the best thing, man, find a recipe of the person that came before you. Once you've had a few successful tanks,
Exactly.
you know, once you've made 15 different cakes and you start to understand like
play
what
around.
makes
Yeah.
a good cake, you can
Play
make your
around.
own.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect analogy.
Right? Yeah, but like, I mean, the one I keep giving all the time is I went bass fishing with this guide, showed me this place, like, or 5 different places, and we catch 30 bass in the morning.
When we going?
Yeah, so I moved my boat, man. This is where I learned, right? And I thought I was a good bass fisherman. I really did.
You come to a
I
new
went back to
whole new
those
lake.
places. We go catch 30 in the morning. You know, we use the technique that he taught me, you know, in the right places.
So you're laying down the gauntlet with me, right?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
so now, man, I moved to a different lake, and it turns out I can spend the same amount of time, be lucky catch one. And it wasn't because I was a good bass fisherman. It was just somebody showed me the right recipe and technique and location.
No
right?
doubt.
Now
You got to
I'm
start
lost.
all over.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. I'm going to keep trying, dude. But like, I didn't know how to do this right, and so it was such a good lesson for me, and I can apply it to all kinds of different things now, especially reefing. Like,
It's very
follow
good,
the
good
guide,
analogy too. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll teach you how to fish on that lake anytime you want me to.
I know. Like, okay, so yeah, dude, you gotta come on out. You gotta show me. All right. So fish room and maintenance was another thing, man. So for me, I found down in the basement is the easiest way because usually there's a wall. You know, you
Right.
can place the tank on the opposite wall of you know your utility room, has your power, your water in it. You can usually put a drain.
Oh, the
in
floor
it.
drain thing, like you were talking about, is
Floor
super
drain?
important. I don't have one
Yeah.
because it's kind of outside. Everything drains through those tiles.
Oh, okay.
But I so love it. I do water changes or whatever. Water goes, and I just leave it. Or I have something even as like a piece of equipment. It's got
Yeah.
a drip leak in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'll get that in 3 days. It's what's the big deal, you know?
So I saw a while back, Mr. Saltwater did a video where he put in like a false floor that had drains in it, and it's because the tank
The
was like up
FRP
in
grid.
the attic,
Yeah, that's
whatever. And I'm
cool.
like, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, and because I am going to spill, something's going to leak, something will happen over the next 10 years, and I don't have to jack my house up for
Right.
it. The little bit of effort I put in now will save me so much later, unless I'm perfect, and I am not, right?
Yes.
And so, however, if I put it in the basement and it leaks, wet carpet.
Right.
I can solve wet carpet. I'm not that worried about it. Even if the carpet got ruined, it's not worth me like building a new floor.
Well, if it's not
you
coming
know.
from down, I mean, when I had my 210 in Utah, it was on the middle floor, right?
Yeah.
And I had an ATO issue that everybody has, right?
Yeah.
Like the overflowing ATO kind of a thing. And it went down the basement. It's raining down the basement. Again, wintertime.
Fire hazard.
Nobody's down there,
Yeah.
right? So it was like 2 days before I realized that it was actually happening down there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible. So yeah, so for me, that was kind of why I ended up down in the basement again, man. And like this room is actually our rec room. So, and I have 2 kids, and we already use it, even though it's like got barely anything in it. It's just a good place to play and keep toys and stuff. In the videos, you'll probably see toys everywhere. Like we actually put like a pinball machine in there.
Cool.
You got your theater seating in there too?
We're gonna
recently?
put like a little movie theater in
Yeah.
there. Like I'm probably gonna put. I have an exercise bike, so sometimes you see whether or not I
Something to
get
hang your shirts
bigger
on?
or thinner. No, I actually use it. like 3 months for a while, you'll see me get skinner, and then you'll say, "Oh, Ryan's using his bike again."
Yeah.
And then you'll see me get fatter, and like, "Oh, Ryan must have hung his shirts on the bike." Yeah, but you know what I like to do? I mean, I'm just totally off topic, but what I like to do is on the theater projector is I put on my favorite like racing games, and I ride the like recumbent bike.
pretend,
And
yeah.
I don't know what it is, but like when the cops are on my tail, I bike faster. I can't help it. It's just the way I like to do it. So that's fun. So, but it's a room that I use down there. It is a room that's super close to water, super close to power. I can put a drain in there without a lot of problems. And ultimately, I also wanted big. I just couldn't help myself. So to me, 360 gallons is pretty big. Yeah, I know I'm a little shy of you, but like everybody's like, "Hey, go 500 club," and I started doing it.
No, when
and
you put
then,
the thing up with the pipes, somebody had said, you need
Oh,
to flip
yeah.
that over.
Flip it
And I
over,
was
yeah.
like, yes, yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So the pipe thing was actually cool. You
great idea.
haven't seen. You'll probably see it next week's video. We framed it out, and even like
Instagram.
last night,
Ryan
man.
BRS.
Like this is the spouse thing. I pushed it into place last night,
Yeah.
and she's like, wouldn't it be better if you turned it sideways? Like, oh no, man, maybe, but like, what am I gonna do now? You know? And so, like, I thought I'd put up bricks.
Because it's not long enough to look like a peninsula. That's why she's saying that. Because it's. Yeah,
I
get what you're going for, but I'm saying for the average person looks at that, they're not going to look at it like a peninsula.
If you see in person, you'll see. But like, there's some things about it.
Does it create a cubby hole for you to go behind, and that's
there's a cubby hole, but like that's where my office is
okay.
going to be. She's like, "What's going to be back there?" I'm like, "That's where I'm going to isolate myself intentionally,
wow.
right?" Intentionally. There's a little pocket over here where I'm going to have
it looks tight.
Well, it's actually, you thought it was going to be cramped.
Yeah.
And I put the thing in place, and like, dude, it's like 6 feet. You know, my desk's only 4 feet.
From the edge of the tank.
It doesn't look like that in the picture, but okay.
Yeah, so it's much wider, and so it's like, if you ever bought furniture and you're like trying to plot it out, like it's so much bigger until you get in the room and you're like, oh, this actually fits way tighter than I thought.
What about that HVAC vent though that I saw?
That's coming out, so I had to move it. And so, like the HVAC guy came in and he said you can move it to another side of the or side of the room or whatnot, you know, or you can just lift it up into the ceiling, right? And he's like, it's not perfect. You're supposed to pull cold air across the floor, dude, but this is your basement. It's cold here everywhere anyway. It's colder than the entire house no matter what. So, like, you could just lift it up if you wanted. I might do it, but I'm going to get an expert to make the decision. But, yeah. So, in any case, man, like, frame it out, look at it. But in my basement ended up being the best place for this thing. And I got to tell you, I've changed my mind like 15 times on where this thing goes. And I was talking to Felix today, and I'm like, hey, if I change a little bit, I'm hoping actually he just tells me no. Because I just want to move forward with the project.
By the way, you mentioned Felix. Felix did my tank, so that is a Reef Savvy tank.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And that tank is, I'm going to tell you right now, the armored seams is the best part of that tank. It is amazing to be able to take my flipper magnet and just go clunk, 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 and not worry about it at all on the, on any of the silicone. I literally can clean the front of that glass in probably under 5 minutes, perfectly clean. And I mean, that tank is solid the way he built that tank.
It's the finer touches, right? All the seams are perfect. There's zero bow, and ultimately, it's like you can get cheap furniture and you can get expensive furniture. You both sit in them, but there are differences.
Yours, is yours going to be rimless, or is it going to be Euro brace? Probably.
No, there's going to be a Euro brace, but no cross braces.
No cross brace.
Yeah, I can't handle a cross brace. Just mess with the lighting.
3/4 inch glass.
I believe it's 3/4 inch, yeah. And so he would only let me go 26.5 inches.
Yeah.
The guy is militant about.
Yeah, he is very much like that. Mine is 32 inches high, and he's like, we got to have the cross brace. We have to have double this and double that. He's like, I don't build anything that's ever going to possibly come loose. So this is the way it's going to be, or it's not going to be.
So you know what though, most people, you're buying a really expensive tank from them, will violate whatever to serve the customer, right?
Yes.
And like, oh well, fine, he wants a 28, I'll make it 28, right?
It's on the borderline, but we'll do it.
You know what? I actually really, really respect Felix because he's so militant about it. I just believe him.
Right.
Like I just like, nope, I won't do it. And like, good. Thank you. I'm so happy that you are so confident in your ability of what you do and how it's going to produce the desired result, that you are the person I look to get this done.
Right.
If you're willing to violate all these things just to make a buck, well, you know what? I trust you way less, and now I got to go look for a different resource to make sure.
Yeah, and not everybody can obviously get a Reef Savvy tank, but I think that's something to take when you're looking at what tank you're going to get, even if it is a 120 or 180 gallon tanks, invest a little bit more, get a little higher quality. You're going to have it you're building a 10-year tank, right? Mm-hmm. You want to have it 5 or 10 years, put the money into the glass. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be around. You want it to be around. You don't want to have that, because if that thing breaks loose, that might be the end of ever having another aquarium with a spouse.
I might have to find a picture of this, but like the tank that we got up front was like a prototype tank that we had for the clownfish harem thing.
Oh yeah.
But if you looked at it straight on,
it definitely
there was
did
such
one of
a
these.
huge bow.
It was
Oh yeah.
And
it's scary.
We wanted to give it away by the time when we tore down the tank, and we were just kind of worried about like. Okay.
I told it it's free. Anybody can have this if you don't put water in it. And so Chad uses a terrarium.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like
a lot of those rimless tanks are like that because they go right on the edge of what they can as far as how high they make them and what thickness of glass they. And if you go down and look down the edge of those, many of those in somebody's house, and it's just like whoop, you can see it.
Dude, there's 2,000 pounds of water pushing on a very heavy plane of glass, man, and like all I can imagine, and there's people standing there staring at it all day long, right? Like, boom! No, that's super scary to me, right? And so I think that was ultimately part of the reason we ultimately took it down, is because like as every year that goes by, man, I know those seams are getting older and older, and like this just does not look safe to me. So like when Felix says do this, I say yes, you know, and I just work within that. And you know what? I bet you Felix will even give you the same advice. Like even if you don't buy one of his tanks, you can talk to him, and you know, like,
if you can get a hold of him.
Well, yeah, the guy is busy.
He is busy all the time.
For sure. There's no question about that. So, all right, I don't know, man.
Questions? Do we have any questions?
Yeah, the last piece of thing I'm just going to think about here is flooring and the damage to the home that we were talking about.
We were kind of just hitting on too. I mean, if you're talking about not just tank placement, but like you guys with the big tanks, choosing the right type of manufacturer, or damage from a big tank exploding or what have you is just not even an option. So
yeah, well, one of the things I was going to think about is where you put it, you know, and so in my first tank, I had it on the far wall of a room. And I had to carry buckets of salt water across hardwood floors, you know, to do my water changes. And I destroyed those floors because these little splashes are inevitable. And the videos we do are a little exaggerated. We're showing splashing all over, but
of course,
like it's always something, man. And I destroyed the floors. I don't remember how much it cost to replace.
I do water changes on mine in Utah, and I had hardwood floors, and I would drag the hose in from the garage where the water was, right? And I'd stick it in, and I'd put a clamp on it to hopefully make it there. I go turn the water on because I'm by myself doing it, right? And inevitably like this, and then water goes everywhere.
So think about it, like if you have some really fancy floors,
some people put little capture things. I mean, one of the guys in our office, you know, even inside his stand, he built a little capture thing with some membrane inside there, so that if water, you know, were to leak out of that, it wouldn't leak out completely, and put the leak detection sensors and stuff in. So sometimes if you're going to have it in one of those areas that you do have the wife floor, you have to put some extra, you know, steps in.
Tile around it maybe, but like just put some thought into like, hey, if things go wrong here, what am I going to damage?
Right.
You know, what is this room above? You know, also like
that's a good point.
So just put some thought into that kind of stuff as like, you know, I wouldn't. You know, maybe I would put go a little heavier than I thought, and a little marble will roll or whatever, but I'm not going to do that above my nursery. You know, like something's the most important thing in my whole life, which is my kids and my wife. I'm not going to do that above that, right? And so, like,
Daddy, why is it raining?
yeah, man. Like, so let's just put some thought into what you're protecting in the different areas of the house, and it could be floors, it could be all kinds of things, fire or whatever, and that matters.
I mean, if I had a second tank in my house, which my wife has, believe it or not, asked for another tank many times when she goes to the events and whatnot. And I tell her, are you going to take care of it? And she's like, well, I'm like, yeah, no, I got enough, all right? But if I did, it'd probably be in like the breakfast area, that kitchen breakfast area or what have you, because it is where everybody is all the time. And if you do have young kids too, I know this isn't what you're doing, but if you're going to do the 120 gallon or the 180 gallon, it's a great spot because it's really great interactivity with the kids and the rest of the family, and look what's going on, and there's always something happening in the tank. So that's probably, if I were going to do, she wants to do an anemone tank. If I were to do one, I'd probably do it in that area.
So that was one of the tanks I think you saw in today's episode was like a look through. So you come in this house, and we saw it from Aquarium Artisans. You open up the doors to come in this house, and boom, there's the aquarium, but it's look through, and you can see into their living room, and you can see the kitchen and whatnot. And if you go to the other side of it, there's a bar in their open kitchen in their living area. And so you come in and see it. Where I'm eating, I see it. Where I'm lounging, I see it. This is part of
your
my
life.
house,
Yeah, it's just part of your life.
And then this is in the same house. Actually, they had one in the shower. Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a cylinder inside their shower where they had put their tank. And I'm like, wow, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. But like, you know what? Every morning they wake up and take a shower and like see their fish.
I don't need a reason for my wife to take longer showers. The water bill's already high enough.
That's probably true, right? And they actually had to like deal with put a chiller in there and stuff because the steam was heating up the water and whatnot.
Crazy.
And, but I'm like, that's the craziest place to put one. But also, for 30 minutes every day or whatever you take a shower I get to enjoy this thing. And it was kind of a look through thing too, so you could see while you're brushing your teeth and whatnot.
Well, key point there is Jeremy was taking care of it for them. So
yes, that's true. I had 2 of these things. It was pretty elaborate. In fact, I had their pool service on the outside of this thing. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like the Swiss Family Robinson, man.
Oh, really?
There's so many cement slides and huts in the trees, and man, these people.
Imagine being that kid.
I know.
How could your life ever get any better?
all downhill from age 6.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, so let's answer some questions here. As usual, Randy can read them out here.
I can't read that either, man.
That's okay, I got it.
You thought I was blind when I said you just got eagle eyes.
First, we got to say thanks to Glenn. Glenn, $4.99. Appreciate that.
Glenn, you're always
Can't
there
wait
for us.
next
Thank you very
week's
much.
Episode. He's here every
I can't
week.
believe you guys make money off this.
I know we make like $20.
Aren't you making enough money off all the gear around here? You got to get money from these guys too?
You know what, actually, so I'm just going to share why we do this, right? And so I don't need money. Glenn, thank you very much.
That was a joke, okay?
No, but this is actually, I thought this was cool. So I was at one of my mentors for YouTube, right? As video creators channel. And there's Tim, my idol, right? And I'm like, oh, super chat. I never use this thing. And then I'm like, man, this guy, he deserves $10. So I sent him $10, and I had a question about using YouTube for some or another. And then he answered me, and I'm like, that is the coolest interaction. I got like a little schoolgirl, oh my God, Tim, talk to me. Right, I was like, this was such a cool.
So this is how to get the bartender.
It's like,
I don't know. I just thought it was such a cool interaction, man. That I'm like, dude, we should just turn this thing on because it's not about the $10 or whatever. It's about the fact that it's just another
So
way
I got
to
to flip
interact.
a switch in YouTube to do that? I guess I got to do that now?
Yeah,
Super
I don't know,
chat.
man.
Okay.
You know what? And there's also a million questions that are piling up. So it's somehow something has to pop up, and it could be 99 cents.
Right.
Whatever,
right.
and it pops up to the top, right,
Right.
or whatever. I just thought it was a super cool thing.
I
Glenn
think
is always there
I do
for
think
us.
it's neat. I was just giving you a ripping. I think every time
Yeah.
I watch one of your live streams or your videos or whatever, and I see that thing come up, and I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was totally against it in the beginning. Dude, this isn't about an avenue to
Right.
And then it's one of those things you use it yourself. You're like, that's
So you're
cool.
probably pretty freaked out when the first one came in, right? You're like, somebody really did it.
I know, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that was so cool.
Yeah,
so
so
anyway,
thanks,
thank
Glenn.
you very much. What's the next one here?
Reef Dad is asking about what about a 220 on Tavertine tile? Do I need to yank the tile?
That's interesting. So, will the weight of the tile support? So, is Tavertine, is that flat?
I mean, you're probably just talking about the eighth inch, quarter-inch tile pieces, 2x2 squares.
Yeah.
And then, do you have to remove those to put it straight
So I think it's
onto
going
the
to be
floor?
a couple of things. One of the things I did on mine when I had the stand made, you have really an option to have legs on your stand that you can basically level it with the feet. Well, when you do that, I'm going to have 5,000 pounds on 4 points of my floor, and then hope the floor distributes the weight. Or I can do bar all the way around and have that sit down on there. So if he had a 220 and it was on a normal kind of stand that's distributing the weight, I don't think it would be a problem at all.
Yeah.
Assuming whoever did his travertine did a great job. It's level, it's flat, it's fully filled in, with the mortar or whatever underneath. I don't think it would be a problem personally.
Yeah, I haven't seen many instances where somebody actually cracked the tile from it. But again, do listen to what he just said. If you have those little feet, which
Single
it
points.
just made me start thinking immediately, how I'm going to get around this, because that means your floor has to be level on its own, right?
Right, or you can still shim with like you can do with a tank with a full stand that goes all the way around. You can still shim it. You won't get the full effect because there still will be part of it lifted up, but you'll still get much more distribution of weight than you will with just 4 points.
That's a good point, though. Even with shims, though, I'm creating points, so I gotta shim the whole thing.
Yeah,
right.
They're definitely depends on how far off your tank is too.
I actually found that in many tanks, we found them not level. We used shims, and we were actually able to use the composite ones. And even though the tank's full, use the hammer and lift it up with water in it. Even when you're like, oh man, I thought I had this perfect, but when you fill it with water, all of a sudden some part of it sinks a little.
I've got
bit.
a great story for that. So Kurt put in a 200-gallon tank in his office just recently. Got it all set up. He did all of it himself, right? He was all proud. He got it in there. He's going to kill me for put this, filled it up with water, and then I come in and I go, you know it's not level, right? And he's like, yeah, it made a creek right when I was filling it up, and now what am I gonna do? So he ended up having to take as much water as he could out of the thing, and then he got these pump shims. Have you seen these? Because it weighs so much, and he's got to now put shims, and it was one of those aquariums that had multiple feet underneath the middle. So these shims are what they use when you lock your keys in the car. You know, to get in, they put it, they wedge it in there, and you pump it up,
and it spreads
it
the
out,
door.
right?
Yep.
And so he got, I don't know, like 6 or 8 of those things, and put them under, and was able to pump up the thing and get the shims under there, and let it back down, and get it level. So
I would have never
pretty
thought
ingenious.
Of that.
Get some of those
cool.
to
And then I always lock my
car.
keys in the car, so he gave one of them.
I know, I need one of those.
There you go.
I'm around people that lock their keys in the car all the time. That'd be a great thing to throw in the truck.
Awesome, man. Next one.
Not really related, but I'm curious what branch. That's that question for me, apparently. I was in the Army, by the way, active duty, 13 years. All right. Since you're setting up and planning for this 360, have you started seeding or curing the rocks? Because you say as soon as you get an idea for a tank in your head, start with the rock right now.
Okay, so I'm not, and I'll tell you a good reason as to why. And somebody brought this up actually in a video not too long ago, in a comment. And normally I would. So normally I would tell you that I'd just start soaking all this stuff right now and let it cycle for 4 to 6 months from the inception of this tank. And if I set up like a 120, I would absolutely do that. In this case, I am almost certainly going to spend a week doing the aquascape. Like I'm going to do it, I'm going to redo it, I'm going to redo it, I'm going to redo it, and everything would have dried out by then. So I'll probably have no value to the fact that I had soaked this water or rock before. And so in this case, I'm not in a hurry. So I'm just going to let it cycle in the tank itself.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
That's what I did on mine. I put the real reef rock in, got everything, I did it on my floor first, right? I set up all of the rock on the floor and made the, different sections of it that I concreted together, and then put it in, filled the tank, and just let it sit there and cycle with nothing in it for like 2 months, just the water, getting the tank together, and then start throwing the little fish in. So I think it's a fine way to do it.
Yeah, I'm going fish first. So I'm going to try to make the tank really cool with fish before I worry about coral and whatnot, right? And so bring a lot of color and stuff in there with the fish, and then worry about coral later. And so as part of that whole process, like, the fish don't need a lot of light, if any, and I'm not going to turn the lights on for probably quite a while.
That's what I did too. I didn't even have lights over my tank for 2 months.
Yeah, so I'm going to cycle it in the tank, and I'm not doing it earlier because like the aquascape for me is going to be one of the biggest things of whether or not I like this tank or not. And I'm just going to spend a lot of time trying to figure it out whether or not I'm happy with it and adjust it. And it would be undue pressure if I was worried about the bacteria on this dying. And actually, I'm going to show you guys a video later. If you guys follow us on Facebook, I'll share it over there. But we did a large water change on the XXL 750, and for a very specific reason I think some of you guys will find interesting that I'll get into later there. But we let the water go down for about an hour, and there's a stripe, man, where all of the coralline algae died, right? In just an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, yeah, no, I'd never really seen that before, man.
Me either.
Yeah, and so it's just a good visual representation of what happens when things dry out.
Yeah.
And it might have been an hour or 20 minutes.
Yeah,
or
some
things,
things, some things like even Acropora don't really, you have a slime ball Acropora, it doesn't care. It could be out of the water for an hour, it's going to slime up and it's fine. But maybe other things I didn't even know that calciferous algae.
It's pretty interesting.
So actually, the thing there is one of the confusions that I think we get a lot is we say the water levels, it doesn't care or whatever. There's a fine line between trying to decide whether or not it doesn't care or it just didn't die.
Okay.
Right? And so I'm sure it cares.
What happens in nature?
Yeah, things die.
Okay.
In masses, right? And so just how often? Stressful events stress it out, and then when it's too stressed, it just dies, right? So we don't know. Just that's the standard that we've had in this hobby for too long is if it didn't die, it must be okay.
Right.
And I think that's actually wrong. So just think about if you were the coral, how you want to be treated, and the sign of the calcareous algae. I mean, it's a literal line. So I'm going to go probably later today on Facebook Live, and we'll show you what it looks like. makes you start thinking about like, well, that organism that's photosynthetic and is calcareous didn't like it. My corals probably don't either. Doesn't mean that they'll die. It just means that this probably isn't their favorite part of the day.
Right.
You know? So that's interesting. Next one.
Joe likes to read build threads backwards so he can see what you produced and then decide if he wants to read the rest.
That's
fair
absolutely
enough.
really good.
I want to see the end of the story
And,
first.
and on mine, for instance, if I were doing that, I'd probably ignore it because he hasn't posted in like a year, so it must have gone south on him.
Exactly.
You know, kind of a thing.
So actually, that's one of the things is when you see this like big chasms, it usually is because it went south.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And nobody wants to show their ugly babies.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
And so like that's an important thing. But I will tell you, actually, one of the things that I always get disappointed by, like when we do our new series and whatever, is like, well, I can't really sell you the dream in the beginning, man, because it doesn't even exist, right? So one of the things we were just talking about this week is like, should we go back and create episode 0 to some of these more popular series and like, hey, this is actually where this story goes,
Yeah.
you know? And so like, if you started here, we're gonna learn all kinds of stuff in the beginning,
Right.
yeah, but this is the result,
Right,
you know, of that. And like, oh, all right.
So now you know you want to hang on.
Yeah, now I know why
Right.
this series is gonna like have.
So I
any
got to go
value
back
to
and
me.
edit my build thread and put the today's picture of the tank in the first post.
Hey, moderators over at Reef to Reef, you should do that. If anybody asks and says, I want to update my first post
I can edit mine
to
for
show
some
you where the
reason,
dream was, maybe you can all edit them, but
think-
then
yeah.
edit the first one and says, this is where this went.
Ah, yeah,
right?
cool.
Like if you're tracking along, man, this
I'm
is
gonna
the
do that.
recipe to that. So
I'm gonna do that.
That's
Cool.
super cool.
There's
all
a
right.
handful of ones here left over. Let's see here. Oh, Brightwell wants to know what rock you're going to use.
Me, I'm wavering, and I'm pretty certain I'm going to use the shelf stuff from Marco
the stuff
Rock.
in the 750?
Yeah, I really like that. Not the stuff that's been like chopped, but the more natural look of
Okay.
it. I really like how that turns out, and I really also like the fact that there are the pieces that are chopped. So when you have a bare bottom, they blend right in with the bottom of the tank. I was going to repeat, Terrance has really been telling me about the branch stuff from Real Reef, and so
I love it.
almost got me there, but I'll let you do it.
The Marco type rock I like when it's not the cut pieces. Whenever I see any of the tanks done with the cut pieces, it reminds me of freshwater.
The flat stuff.
The flat stuff,
Yeah,
I don't
agree.
like it at all. I get that at some point you're going to grow corals all off of this and stuff, but you're still going to see that flat stuff. It's still going to exist.
I would never use that flat stuff.
It's still going to be in there. So the regular Marco rock is great in that way, but the branch stuff that's available.
my favorite part about your aquascape.
So there's 2 reasons really I love the branch stuff. Number one, when you put it in the tank and you aquascape with it, right away your tank starts to look good. Okay, I mean it's not only is it purple, but it looks like something that a reef should look like, and the fish can swim in and out of it, and it seems very natural. But the other side of that is there's an efficacy to growing corals from it.
Yep.
So you have a place to mount. You can see there on mine, these are the first branches that I put in there.
Yeah.
You can actually mount the corals right to the tips of those and even along the spine of those branches, and it brings the corals out into the water so that the water is able to go all the way around the coral. It's not up against a wall,
Yeah.
right? And then what ends up happening is they start growing out. And if you look at the more recent one, even the video that he had, you'll see a couple of corals that I have off the left there, where they grow out and they actually will fan out just like they do in nature. Off of that branch, and so you get these really beautiful colonies that start to grow and look very natural in the tank.
Well, you were telling me that you were able to, if you wanted to add more in
That's the
there,
other thing.
you could take a branch and kind of fork it in
Yep,
there,
you
and then it
cantilever
braces
in.
itself.
Yep.
Yeah, that was
so
really
after
cool.
after your stuff starts to
I didn't even think of that. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
no.
so if you look at my tank now
stuff.
versus in the beginning, so the first picture he showed you, there's a couple of branches, right? Now that's the first couple I put in, and then you see it now. You'll see that there's a bunch more growing out that way.
Yeah.
It's because I started cantilevering in more branch as the tank started to grow out. And
You could never do that really with normal rock, right?
No, and well, the only other way to get, because I've done this out jutting type thing before, but I had to drill the rock, I had to get fiberglass
Right.
rods, I had to do all this, and then once it's in place and growing coral, to add to it, nah.
Yeah, see, and what happens is once it grows in, the coral itself starts to be the binder to keeping everything together. The coral, the animals, the little worms, everything holds it so it's strong. And then when you put that next one in, it's strong enough to hold that
Yeah,
branch,
that's cool.
and there's nothing on the branch anyway yet. And then by the time stuff grows on the branch, you know, it works out great in my opinion, and I couldn't have been happier with making that decision from the beginning.
That last bit, man, caught me off guard. I really, because when the thing grows out and you're like, where am I going to put more coral, right?
Just cantilever
now
another
you just put in
branch in.
some more branches that look totally normal. They're purple already, you know, so they don't really, you know,
they
are
blend
not
in.
eyesore.
Yeah.
They don't grow algae immediately like everything else does. And so, you know, one of the things, man, that like really stuck home for me when Joe was here and he was doing the shelf aquascape for the XXL 750 was with an SPS tank, never go above 50%, right? Never go over half the tank.
I made the mistake in mine. I made the mistake in mine on the Bommy on the left. I made it too high on mine, and because of that, I reached the top. They grew out of the water, and Seriatopora in the middle of those other two colonies is now gone. I had to pull it out of the tank.
That's a 32-inch tall tank, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So this is not a small tank, and they're already growing at the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know that's a big deal, and so in an aquapore tank. It's balancing what it looks like in the beginning and where it goes. Because in an aquapora tank, the aquapora is the aquascape eventually.
Right.
And it's so hard because if you saw that rock when I started out, it would look like a tiny little thing in this gigantic tank, and you're like, oh man, look at that. It's just like, oh, there's hardly any rock in this tank at all.
Yep. And like imagine if you would chop the top half of that off, it'd even look worse, right?
Yeah.
But now go to his tank and like, of course I wanted to do that. You know, like how do I get water over the top of these things? You know, they're gonna
And there's more branch on the right there too. That's hard to see. I can't see it from here, but probably at home they can see it. There's more branch on the right that I added in about 9 or 10 months ago, because after the Heniocus ate up all the LPS on the right, I decided that's going to be my SPS side too, and I needed more place to mount corals. So I just started putting more branch in.
So this is one of those things like where don't make the mistakes that we did, even though like we see them, and watch whether or not I make the mistake again. And I'm not gonna, I'm gonna be okay with the fact that like some of the viewers out there say, dude, that aquascape looks terrible. Right? Like, because that isn't my goal. My goal is what it looks like in 2 years.
Correct.
Right? That it's small and it doesn't look like it fills up the tank, like whatever. Like, that is not my goal. My goal is to think future forward now, right?
Yeah.
And I will tell you, as somebody who does video and stuff, that's like a lot of pressure. You know, like you create an aquascape or whatnot for the tank, and you're like,
everybody's judging
everybody's going to judge this, you know, like, and now, like, I'm just kind of getting past that. You know, it's just like, I don't really care. I'm going to do what I think is right, show people what's right, and then show you what the result is out of it and get past what anybody's going to say about it today. I don't care.
Well, if you, in future one, if you want me to talk about aquascape stuff, I can do that.
I know, we were thinking about inviting you out here for that one too. And you just train wrecked my current plant. So I don't know. I was going the shelf.
It was Randy, blame Randy because he brought it up.
I know. We were talking about this months ago.
I'm going to blame, wasn't it like Brightwell, Jeremy there that train wrecked my problems?
What rock we're going to use.
I'm going to call him later. All right.
So Derek's question, so let me give you a couple.
He's a control freak.
Couple sentences and a room for a disclaimer, but are you still using the dose for your calcium reactor pump, and if so, how are you doing it?
Oh,
okay.
Interesting.
So I for my calcium reactor, I do two things.
Yeah.
One is I do pH control based on the Trident results.
Yeah.
So I have 3 levels of pH in my calcium reactor. I have the low level, I have the high level, and I have off, basically. And so based on what happens with that, with the Trident results that happen 6 times a day, it changes the pH level, that changes the concentration, as you know from your videos, and it raises or lowers the alkalinity. In addition to that, obviously you have to feed it, and that is where I use the dose, and it's kind of an off-label, they would say in the medical industry, use of the dose. It is not a recommended way outside of about 80 milliliters a minute. So if you're doing 80 milliliters a minute or less, it's not a problem because you can put it in the chart just like you would for dosing and do it across the whole day and it'll work. It's 110,000 milliliters a day or something like that.
Right.
Obviously in my tank, it's got a lot more consumption than that. So I have to run it more. So in order to do that, yes, I basically have it running with special kind of programming, and it's still doing it right now today. And probably I love it so much that if I needed even more flow through there, or if I needed it to be quieter, I would use both pumps and just go back and forth between the two of them because it is so handy.
So for those of you who don't know, Terrance has been one of the critical people, probably nobody knows, critical people for all these calcium reactor conversations. And he really sparked some thoughts in my mind that like I hadn't thought about before. and been a big part of that journey. And so the first one was actually this conversation about using the dose, and he's just like, dude, it doesn't matter if you dose...
continuous. It's the continuous flow problem. Everybody thinks you need to have continuous flow through your reactor.
Yeah.
It's a myth.
It doesn't matter. If I'm going to dose 10,000 milliliters in a day, it doesn't matter if I do it for half the day at 50 milliliters or whatever. I could do double the flow rate and have the pump off half the time. Like, you're right. You could.
Because the amounts that you're actually putting in each time are so small, and the differential between the pH level of 6.5 and your 8 is 1.5, and you do the math and the percentages, it really doesn't change anything inside the reactor, because the reactor is like 2 gallons.
So the way that this ended up for me is ultimately what the calcium reactor is a one-part machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a container that produces a one part for your tank that produces calcium and alkalinity for the tank in a single solution. What we found with Randy's experiments is we can control the strength of that just by controlling the pH inside this thing. So if I make a stable 40 DKH solution that's coming out of here, just how much I dose. And it really doesn't matter. I could probably like 2-part dose it, other than pH swing, like all at once, it's probably not the best case because of the pH in this case, but like it doesn't matter if I dose it, I could dose, if I was gonna dose 1,000 milliliters an hour of this stuff, it doesn't matter if I do it in 1,000 milliliter spurts or if I spread it out over the whole hour, right?
Yeah.
And like, doesn't matter, you can get like into the nitty gritty, nerdy part of it, but for the most part, it will not change the results in your tank.
Yeah, you basically have 2 variables. You can change the flow or you can change the pH. In mine, I keep the flow pretty much the same.
Yep.
And I change the pH based on the Trident thing, but you could do it the other way around too.
So this is what I spend
the way
like
I
2
used to
hours on the weekend sometimes, is having this nerdy conversation with Terrance, sitting out on my power porch. Like,
I'm on the same place. I'm out on my deck.
Yeah, like, wait. And then we go test and stuff. And in fact, we had like an hour conversation
I'm already
yesterday.
playing with the skimmer, by the way.
Yeah, the skimmer thing. Like,
I'm
we
already
were doing
playing
this
with
all
it.
wrong. Like this.
I'm not completely with you yet on all of it yet.
Yeah, but like,
I'm testing certain things at home myself.
Conversation's elevating, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
There's
like,
no doubt.
Steel sharpening steel, like the same thing when I listen to you, and like.
I actually turned down my skimmer flow a little bit
Good.
and put a 1/4-inch piece of RO tubing in the tube to restrict the flow of the air.
Yeah.
And I'm running that right now and kind of seeing what's going to happen in the
Interesting.
I'm
the
excited.
skimmer.
I'm excited to see
Because I
how
got
that
one of
pans
those
out.
big, it's like a 10 or 12-inch skimmer or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So there we go. We got like we're already over here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So let's peel out those
we've
last
only
few
got-
questions and
we've
then we'll
got
roll.
one more question. The other 2 are sort of, I guess. So $1.99 from our coral reef. Appreciate it.
thank you very much.
Salinity probe, bubble magnet, or replacing. He said the salinity probe collects a lot of bubbles, basically.
It is.
Yes.
Replacing them.
What's the
question just says replacing them.
Oh, are you probably going to replace them with a different probe?
Is that what he's asking?
I think
I don't
so.
know.
I think that
Maybe.
maybe is a
The
question.
dilemma is inherent in the design of conductivity probes in
Yeah.
general. There's some things that we're testing in-house to try to see how to mitigate some of these things for customers. But most of it has to do with placement and the way that you use it. If you get the placement correct on your salinity probe, and when you calibrate it, you make sure there's no air bubbles. When you're calibrating it, it will work consistently.
Well, even our Hawk, our more expensive type of machinery, has the same form factor as the salinity probe. And
It is the way
it's
they
kind
work.
of the way they go.
It's the way they work. It's the way that the device works. And I know Ryan can't make it work, but that's Ryan.
No, so I will just say that I've had challenges getting it consistent, and if I do, I'm not the only one.
You're
'Cause
right. It's
I've
one of our
done-
biggest challenges for customers. You're 100% correct. I'm not trying to dodge that at all.
But nobody else has solved it either, right? And so if I was going to trust one, this is the best one that I've used.
Anything that
So-
that does conductivity measurement has a chance of getting surface tension bubbles on it, which will then make the measurement different.
Yeah, so end of story. What I use it the current way is like catastrophic. If it changes a lot, I need to do something about it. I'm not controlling any equipment with it personally.
We don't even
but-
advocate that, by the way.
But
Yeah.
hey, dude,
Just
we
monitor.
have had instances where, like on the LPS tank, the saltwater ran dry
Yep.
on our auto water change thing. And the
we're-
salinity started dropping because it was pulling water out, and the
water,
outer
yeah.
Nothing's
top off
coming back.
water was
Nothing's coming
finishing
in.
it, right? So it saved that tank there, but as a warning system, not as a control.
Yes.
Right.
So it is a real valuable thing, just not accurate enough that like I want to control.
And very
it.
soon we're going to have a new video. Paul, who heads up our customer support team, is going to do a new video on that with a bunch of hints and tips on how to get the best out of the salinity probe. That'll, I'm sure, help it for a vast majority of people.
Yeah.
Perfect. Next one.
All right, this one's just a plug for a Trident, but Cody Starks gave us a couple bucks, and then he says, "Hey, Terrence, Trident hookup.
I will pay.
I will pay." He said.
I'll be
$2 is what he paid.
Cody, I'm going to be really curious, man. The pressure's on. If that $2 will find a way to get you a Trident in some manner.
I don't know about that.
I
But,
don't know, man.
but I'll tell you what, it is Let's Talk Reefs, hashtag Let's Talk Reef, and I'll have to turn on the, what do I turn on again?
Super chat.
Super Chat. I'm going to have to turn Super Chat on, and then I guess people will be trying to influence us
Oh
at that
yeah,
point.
they will.
All right, well,
All right, last
yeah,
one
there you
up there. Pretty interesting because we were just talking about this earlier. Will the battery backup option for the Neptune pumps, or will there be a battery backup option for Neptune pumps sometime in the future?
I'll give you
down
the answer
road?
I give for most questions about what's coming down the road,
Yeah.
which is pretty much everything that you see as an important component of a reef aquarium is on our whiteboard. So where it sits in the, hey, we're going to do that, when we're going to do that, it all depends on a lot of factors. So I really can't comment on what's coming up in the future, but it is obviously one of those products that we had on a questionnaire 2 MACNAs ago of how important do you think this thing is compared to these other things.
Yeah.
So it's certainly on our radar to some degree.
So this is my personal opinion on that one, is anybody who's doing this for a long time knows that they wouldn't buy a pump without it, right? Like if you're gonna invest like a lot of money and your pets, you're not gonna buy one without it. But that said, like the Vortec pump, I don't know, I haven't looked at the actual numbers in this, but I would be surprised if even 1/20th of the people that bought a Vortec also bought the battery backup.
Yeah.
So like
That is a factor that goes into when we decide on products.
yeah, so there's a real pitch. It's like, so it's what people are buying. Like,
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
we can't do everything, and so there's an opportunity cost, obviously, to each and every product, and there's tons of great ideas. I can assure you that with having a reef like I do, and all of our people, front office people, all have amazing reef tanks. We all have tons of ideas, just like you have ideas, and you just can't take them all on. So you have to kind of rank them as, okay, this is the one that's going to affect the most amount of people positively, also bring revenue in for the amount of R&D resources and manufacturing resources and everything else to make it happen.
Yeah, so like to get to the point where I wouldn't even buy a pump that didn't have that, to be honest, was like 15-year journey, right? Like even though I knew better for the first 10 years, that wasn't the breaking point.
Right.
And the reason it's a breaking point this year is because I lost a lot of fish with a single power outage, and like I refuse to learn that lesson again that way. In fact, I just cut a check for like $9,800 to have a full-time a generator plugged in my house.
Oh,
so
yeah.
the whole house generator, right? It was like $7,000 just for the tank and $9,800 for the whole house, and now we will never be out of power. My neighbors will come to my house. Power outage, we'll watch a movie.
They never last that long, though. They never last that long.
Well, actually, here we have tornadoes, man. So, there was one tornado here where this whole neighborhood was out for weeks.
My power goes off probably at least once a month, but it's off for like, at most an hour.
Yeah, it's usually a major storm that blows down enough trees that it like just took out all the wires above the ground.
Well, for us, if anything like that, natural disaster, it's going to be an earthquake, and I'll have much bigger things to worry about than the power being out.
Oh yeah.
So here we have storms that can do that kind of thing, and it's only happened once, but like, dude, if you start thinking about like what's going to happen tomorrow, zero chance. Over 20 years, it's pretty good, actually. That, like something's going to happen that will take out something big. So for me, I got that in. I don't have to worry about it. I can watch movies and my fish.
Well, I'm listening to you, man. So
there you go.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for going over here.
we had a good time.
Yeah, dude, awesome.
A lot of good info.
And always, dude, steel sharpens steel. Man, your like ideas. You left me with a rock conundrum already.
Good.
And we will see you guys all next week. So see ya.
See you guys.
See you guys.